Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and before I tell you about my incredible trip to Palisades, Tahoe for the Pain McShlonkey Classic, aka the PMS, I'm going to give you an update on my life and times because that's what I do in these intros. And while I usually bum you out talking about my personal life or just annoying you because I'm always complaining about something, while you're listening to this episode, I'll either be preparing for or en route to Europe for the first time in a long time. While I usually do ski trips or trips to the beach, this time it's all about checking off some of my wife's bucket list destinations. We start out with a week in London, and then we take an underwater train tunnel from England to Paris for a week there. So it will be 2 weeks of Powell movements in places I've never been, and maybe some bidet action to go along with it. If you have any suggestions of cool shit that I should do in either city, and I'm talking about off the beaten path cool shit that doesn't involve museum-like experiences, you know, a good restaurant or bar or place to see a live show, send an email to mike@thepowellmovement.com and let me know what you're thinking. I would love to find some cool stuff that we don't know about already, so I appreciate that. As far as the podcast goes, I have episodes recorded to get me through the trip, and then I come back and I'll be scrambling to get an episode out. While that's always stressful, I haven't missed a week in 8 years, so you know I'll be regular the Monday I return. And while we're talking about me being away, what I should be talking about is my episode this week. It's my annual Pain McShlonkey recap episode. This is where I travel to one of my favorite places in the world, Palisades, Tahoe, to witness the greatest ski event known to man or woman, the Pain McShlonkey Classic. In terms of street cred, winning a golden saucer at the PMS is bigger than Olympic or X Games gold, which is why it always makes it an honor for me to be brought in year after year to call the action and help keep the energy level and fun meter pinned all day long. And really, while I'm the voice of the action trying to keep the energy and fun meter pinned all day long, the athletes are the ones who really do that. They start pre-gaming early in the morning and go late into the night, and it is one of those amazing things to see as they take over the mountain at Palisades, Tahoe. This is always the most fun day of the year because we're celebrating the spirit of one of the most fun personalities to ever be part of our great world of snow, Shane McConkey. This is a trip I do every year and a podcast I put out every year, which means it's getting harder and harder to make these podcasts awesome and different. So while I'm at the event, I'm always stressing out and I'm always thinking that I didn't get enough content worthy of releasing a podcast. And like every year, I come home, I start the edit process, and then I start smiling to myself as I realize I was able to capture some new, never-heard-before McConkey stories. And that's what this podcast is about, honoring the most fun, most inclusive, most passionate, most inspiring person I've ever known. Bold words, but I've never met anyone like Shane before. And I've never met anyone like him since. I could go on and on about Shane because he was such a once-in-a-generational dude, but if you know him or you met him, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you didn't, and you just saw him in the movies, imagine he was like that all the time in real life. If Shane McConkey were alive today, he would be the king of social media. I can imagine a Mr. Beast-like figure, but laugh out loud funny, championing for the things that he cared about most: planets, animals, and winter. Before we get into the episode, I want you to do a few things for me. The first is tell a friend about the show. That really does help the show grow. The second is have you and said friend listen to my sponsor ads and buy stuff from them. I only work with the best brands in the industry, and they are Elon Skis, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Best Day Brewing, Outdoor Research, and Stanley. Now, it's time to take you to Palisades, Tahoe, and the most important event in skiing, the Pain McShlonkey Classic. We'll start this one out with me and my son Keaton landing in Reno for our annual pilgrimage to the PMS. This is Keaton's second trip. He's 14 years old, and to him, I haven't been cool in a couple of years. I mean, I'm his dad, and dads aren't cool for the most part. And while I do a lot of live events, they're usually not in Seattle. So last year on our trip to the McConkey, it was the first time that Keaton had ever seen me in my element on the mic. And for the first time since he's been a teenager, I was cool for a couple of days. And while I could care less about being cool in regular life, being looked at as cool by my kid really means something to me. Anyways, what made me even cooler to him was the fact that I've been coming to Palisades for a long time and that I've emceed this event 13 times in person. So I know a lot of people in town, based on me talking on a mic for 4 hours at arguably Palisades' wildest event and party, with a fun meter that rivals the legendary Palisades Ludacris and Shaquille O'Neal shows that they held on the Sun Deck this year. So since I've done so much time on the mic in this town, when Keaton and I walked through the village, I saw about 20 different people that I've gotten to know over the years. Keaton was like, dude, how do you know so many of these people? And then, when some of the people were skiers that he knows because he follows them on Instagram, I could tell that he wasn't really impressed, but all of a sudden he was interested in what his dad does. Then he became impressed. The Pit Viper guys came over and they gave him and I sunglasses to wear, and that's the moment when I officially became a rad dad for the weekend. The funny thing is, I really thought Keaton would be stoked to see me on the mic at a big event. But both times he's been at the McConkey, he watched me on the mic for about 20 minutes, and then he went skiing, popping in and out as he pleased. And that's how it should be. At the end of the trip, he was like, wow, Dad, I didn't know you could do that on a microphone. And that felt pretty good. But when the event ended, we went back home, and I went back to being a loser dad. There won't be too much more about Keaton in this podcast, but again, I was cool for 3 days, and we made deep pow turns together, and I felt that I needed to share that with you. Either way, I was excited to be at this year's event. We land in Reno, we pick up Roy Tuscany's gigantic pickup truck at the airport, we went and ate at In-N-Out, and then we headed to Palisades, Tahoe. From there, I met up with Wendy Fisher, Lotzi Hawk, and Malone and Christy Camp, and we had some beers at the Plump Shack, and that was night one. Friday was a ski day, and I should first and foremost thank Matt Peterson, the Vice President of Marketing at Palisades, for taking care of us with tickets. If you don't know Matt, well, he did a podcast with me a while back when he was running all things at Woodward. He's a former pro snowboarder, a second-generation resort guy who's sharp as a tack when it comes to marketing, and he gets it more than most when it comes to the culture around skiing and snowboarding. The plan was for Matt and I to go make some turns, but after skiing from 9 to 2:30, my knee was swollen and it was angry, so we decided to grab a beer and a burger. It was my first time meeting Matt in person, and we chatted for over an hour on Friday afternoon. Matt's the Vice President of Marketing at Palisades. That means he had way more important things to do than to talk to me on a Friday afternoon. But he wasn't just checking a box. We had a real conversation for over an hour, and we talked some business too. My takeaway is that Matt is one of those brilliant marketers that's cool in a snowboarder kind of way, if that makes any sense to everyone, and he's proven time and time again that he can successfully navigate his way through the corporate hurdles to make rad shit happen. It was one of those conversations where I left and I was like, wow, I want that guy as my friend, and he's way smarter than me. So Palisades is in good hands. Thanks for the hookup and your time, Matty P. After that beer, it was over to meet up with Shane McConkey and her army of volunteers, and I helped unload way too many boxes for the event. Then I had dinner at Plump Shack with a big crew. Then Keaton and I headed out for a quick hot tub. Then we passed out as athlete registration for the PMS is at 7:30, and that's bright and early. At this point, I'm going to bring in my first guest to the podcast. Mike Gutt was the mastermind behind the dominance of K2 in the early 2000s. An incredible athlete himself, Mike never wants to be in the spotlight. And while he's come up so many times on this podcast, and he's a best friend to me, he's always declined when I've asked him to be a guest on the show. I could dig deeper into the reasons why I think that is, because I've thought about it a lot, but really, who cares? This isn't the kind of thing that Mike likes to do, but he agreed to tell me a McConkey story, and my goal was to first get in a bunch of questions about the early days of Shane's working with K2, and then get my McConkey story. You were with K2 when K2 signed Shane McConkey. You were the team manager at the time. And what was that courtship like, Mike? Did he come to you and Jeff Matura and say, hey, I want to be on K2? Can you kind of lay out how that process went? I know it was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, but to be honest, it happened really quickly. The courtship didn't last long. If I recall correctly, it happened maybe at the end of a prior year. And this is when the trade show was, I believe, in January timeframe. So it was earlier in the year. And so I think it must have been based on budgets where, the existing sponsor didn't work out or it wasn't going forward. And I think Shane was really interested in K2 because we were pushing the envelope with different product innovation. We were doing a lot of stuff with twin tips, making them fatter, making fat twin tips, doing things like cheaper skis in that space. And I think we also had a pretty robust, I would say, pro model line, just in the sense where we were really backing our athletes with products. So there was interest there, I think, from Shane's side. From our side, I can be honest, I had kind of mixed opinions. We had Seth. Seth is like the icon, right? And you watch any MSP movie and it's Seth and Shane. You take your sides. It's like Blake and Schmidt back in the day. Like, I like this person or I like this person. And we had our horse in the stable with Seth being that iconic athlete. So we were then going to have two like opposing approaches, right? Somebody that's soft spoken, that just is like a punk attitude, like kind of anti-authority. And then you had Shane, which is the super humorous personality that is incredibly personable and just like almost an entity in addition to an amazing ski athlete. He was also pursuing base jumping at the time and ski basing. And that was an area that was, I would say, controversial. But at the same point, like it happened really quickly. It was a natural fit. It made sense just with where K2 was going. It also made sense in terms of just kind of the development of product going forward.
You know, when you think about the development of product going forward, Shane was known for being a tinkerer and always wanting to be involved in product development. You were his point person at K2. What was it like working with him, developing the pontoon or really any of his ideas?
Well, day one, I don't even think we had signed him yet. I remember sitting in the office with a VP of marketing at the time, and Shane came in and just basically put skis up against the wall and told us what needed to happen. Like, this is really kind of a strange pairing that Shane had in a very positive way, where you think about little kids and they have endless energy, right? They never give up. You take them to the pool and they swim for hours. I think that was Shane with like product development. His mind was always thinking, he was always coming up with new ways to approach it or ways to think about the sport or the flotation of skis, for example, with the pontoon. So yeah, day one, he, basically had skis up against the wall of what he wanted to do and came in with drawings, and that never ceased, right? Even after the development of the pontoon, which was a pretty amazing experience, there was always other ideas where we should be doing this, we should be doing that. I know that Schlong came up with an interview you did with Mike Rosen, but these are the ideas that he wanted to keep pursuing, these endless opportunities to enjoy and have fun and maximize the way you go down the hill on snow. So, I mean, at times it was a bit overwhelming because if he didn't hear back, he was trying to go through every angle, whether it's through the development engineers, through the marketing team, through sales. Like, I mean, he was, the relentless is probably the best word in terms of like trying to get his point across until he was heard. It wasn't that he ever wasn't heard. It was just a matter of like, there's timelines, right? There's already priorities that are in the queue and that just needed to fit into the right spot. So I don't think that was always the understanding that Shane had, that there are other competing priorities and other parts of the business that just need to be addressed before we get to some of the cool, exciting, innovative projects.
So he's going to be remembered for a lot of those innovative projects and products that he created, but he's also going to be remembered for his incredible personality and his sense of humor that no one since has had in the ski industry. I mean, there are so many stories that people have about Shane. And will you share your McConkey story with us?
I mean, there's a handful to pull from, but I think the best one is at K2, there was a crew that was involved with product testing and development. And so we would go to different locations, probably 9 months of the year, and get on snow and start testing products. And with Shane's awareness of product development, with what he had done with prior companies, we quickly got him involved with product development. And so the first opportunity that I ever had to really interact or meet Shane, let me say I had met him briefly up at High North for I rode a chairlift with him, but it was like superficial conversation. But this was the first time I really had interaction with him for more than an hour where you actually get to talk and you get to go into a little more detail about the person. But this is the first time I met him. So we all flew over to Munich, Germany. We were coming from different locations. I was coming from Seattle. Shane was obviously coming from whether it be Reno or San Francisco, flying out, or maybe somewhere over in Europe already if he was already filming. But we all converged on a hotel in Munich. And so being the team manager at the time, I had the fortune of rooming with Shane. And so, pre-assigned rooms, and Shane was already in the room. So I kind of cruised into the room. I opened the key card and, he's already in there. And I said, "Oh, hey, Shane, how's it going?" So I had been coming from the airport, probably needed to take a leak or something. I had right into the bathroom. And so I'm taking care of my business. And I hear this call from the room, hey, I want you to check this out. I've got this weird spot that I don't know what it is. It's like this strange brown spot. I'm like, hang on. Let me finish up going to the bathroom. So it's kind of one of those hotel layouts where your bathroom is kind of off and you can't really see into the main sleeping area. And there's two beds.
Okay.
So I had to like walk around, it's like a closet area. Maybe there was like a sink outside of the bathroom or whatever. So I had a total block view. So I come around the corner and I turn the corner and he's on the bed, the far bed. And I totally remember this. He's on all fours and his ass is facing me. And he's got his pants down and he's pointing to his butthole saying, I have this strange brown spot. Can you tell me what it is? And this was the first time really interacting with Shane. He starts busting up laughing. I do the same. Like, it was weird, but it was weird in a really funny way. Like, that was my intro to Shane's sense of humor. And I don't think it ever ended. I feel like every time there was always something new and shocking that he did. And it was always done so cleverly. It was like a joke, right? You had the setup and you had the punchline. And the way he set things up with the punchline was always on a higher level. And if it was spur of the moment, hats off to him because it was incredible. But I feel like there was so much thought put into his humor and his sense of humor and how he caught you off guard that it just made him a remarkable person that nobody will forget.
So that's a pretty cool backstory on how Shane made it onto K2. And the backstory of the Pain McShlonkey Classic is that it was an underground event around the 98 X Games. By 2001, there were 3 events that were part of the PMS Classic. There were the switch slalom, the small air, and the downhill. So every year, right around the anniversary of Shane's death, snowbladers from all over the world come to the downhill in hopes of going home with the coveted golden saucer. When we get to registration at 7:30, the athletes are getting primed and ready to race. Think athletes wearing the dumbest and funniest costumes, all sweating bullets for 30 minutes because they're all wearing way too many layers. And the combination of that, times the hydration, the vitamins, and all the things that these athletes are taking to get themselves psyched up, creates a pretty wild scene for the event. While most years, the mountain's hard and fast, making for a peak snowblade experience. But this year, we have a foot of snow, and since blades have to be less than 100 centimeters, the riders with modded powder blades had the clear advantage. Really, the day's all about getting weird and being funny in the spirit of Shane, and K2 rep Mike Rosen shares a story that captures a little bit of that.
So I'm here with Mike Rosen. He's been on the podcast before, and Mike tried to record some stories last year for this, and they weren't funny enough to make the podcast. But we did an awesome episode, and people seem to really enjoy it based on the number of listens it got. So Mike now has 2 great stories, he says, and we're going to start with your first McConkey story. We're hoping it's going to be great. I have medium expectations. Mike, what do you have for me?
Well, first of all, I have really low expectations because in my mind, they're super funny, but I really don't think anything that I find is funny, other people find funny. So the first one was the time we tried to do a base jump off the Silver Legacy.
I was there, right?
Yeah, yes, you were. And I have a lot of experience with skiers. I don't have a lot of experience with base jumping. And personally, I don't really like to jump out of anything, period. So Shane and I had probably gone to the top of Silver Legacy 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 times. And the real concerning part was every time we went up to the top of the Silver Legacy, Shane kept looking at the locks on the doors to try to figure out how he could pick them to go up on his own. And I'm like, dude, you cannot poach this. And he's like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, we get up there, day of the jump, huge media, TV, Warren Miller, everybody. And we open the door and the wind is coming straight at us. Something we hadn't seen any time. And we got everybody up there. And all of a sudden, Shane leans over the edge and he spits. And it hits a window. So I spit, I hit the window. And then Shane spit, hit the window. And we went on and on and on and on. Until finally, I don't know, maybe 2 hours later, we canceled the jump. And we went down, I don't know. Actually, Ayla was a baby. Sherry said she didn't really want to hang out with us and said, you guys go do what you're going to do. And Shane and I went to the bar, grabbed a beer before the big event with Warren Miller, and I said, dude, that was so stressful. Like, I don't know how you do this. And he goes, oh, Rosen, I was never going to jump. As soon as you opened the door, I knew we weren't going to jump. And I'm like, well, then why did we keep spitting over the edge at the window? And he goes, I spit once. You spit. And then I just figured it was funny, so I'd see how many times can I get Rosen to spit. And I'm like, you motherfucker. And he purely did it to bust my balls. And for anybody who really never met Shane, that's Shane.
Now it's time for my first sponsor break, and I want you to buy all of your ski and snowboard gear from Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. Why Peter Glenn? Well, first and foremost, they're the little guy who's been getting people out on snow for over 65 years. They aren't trying to take over an industry by making a ton of branded products that compete with the brands they already sell. They're not trying to get you to stay at a hotel or sell you a vacation. Peter Glenn is about making sure you purchase the right products to ensure that you're going to have the most fun on the hill. And they have all the brands, all the products, and incredible deals both in-store and online. While other retailers focus on algorithms and AI, Peter Glenn is all about having the most knowledgeable staff that understands what you need. And if you've been following them on Instagram, they've been dropping some incredible pro tips that will make your time on the hill more enjoyable. At the end of the day, people have trusted Peter Glenn since 1958 because of their proven track record and all-around passion for snow and beyond. So if you ski, snowboard, inline skate, wakeboard, water ski, or need outerwear for your adventure, Peter Glenn Ski & Sports is your one-stop shop, and they offer free shipping on orders over $50, a hassle-free return policy, and they price-match reputable dealers. So please support this podcast and buy your stuff over at peterglenn.com. Next up, it's Elan Skis. I started telling you about Elan building a cult following in the States about 3 years ago. And if you're like me and heading up to the mountain on a weekly basis, I know you've been seeing more Elans. There's a reason for that. People who ski Elans notice that skiing on award-winning products made in what is considered the best factory in the world will make them a better skier. The product they put into the marketplace is second to none. I mean, Elan's a company that also makes luxury yachts, and they don't cut corners on materials or production. The difference in quality is noticeable. Walk up to any ski wall and compare the craftsmanship of an Elan ski to everything else on the wall. You'll see a difference in the fit and finish, but the most important difference is how they'll perform on snow. That's why Elan's been winning a ton of awards at the magazine test, because they really do ski better. If you want to have more fun on the mountain this season, get on an Elan. You can find out about all things Elan over at elanskis.com. My final sponsor this round is Stanley, and if you haven't been hearing a lot about Stanley lately, you must be living under a rock. They've absolutely blown up in 2023, and everyone is talking about them. I've been telling you about how incredible their products are at keeping your drinks hotter and colder than anyone else's for about 7 years now. I mean, they invented the category in 1913, and while they always have done well, the world now knows that if you don't have a Stanley, you don't have the best. And I love having the best. Personally, I use Stanley pint glasses every single day, and I swear by them. And my wife and so many others can't live without their Stanley quenchers. And recently, I've integrated Stanley food storage devices into my ski routine. Instead of buying $20 burgers, we bring our food to the mountain and it stays piping hot in our Stanleys. And I end up saving about $70 a weekend not buying food. While that's rad, what's even radder is that Stanley offers Powell Movement listeners their biggest discount that they make available to the public. I'm going to save you 30% on all your Stanley products. Here's what you need to do to get that discount. Head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and at checkout, enter the code SNOW30. That's all caps and the number 30 with no spaces, and you'll save that 30%. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. Before the event could start, Mike went over all the important things for the athletes, starting with the rules. And the only rules at this event are that there are no rules, except for the rules. Don't do anything that would upset a family, nothing illegal, and don't be the person that ruins this event for everyone. This is an every man and every woman for themselves event. There will be 2 winners and 69 losers, and that's all you need to know. Then it was time for some inspiring words from Shane McConkey, a big cheer of thank you, Shane, and it was time for early ups on the infamous KT chair on a POW day for the Bladers. I had a few minutes to chat with Shane McConkey, so I might as well drop our conversation right here.
Sherry, what goes into putting on this event on every year? Like, when will you start for next year?
We start in November.
So it's a 4-month lead up?
Yeah, pretty much.
And what are the headaches that you experience every year? Because I know you're really stressed a lot.
I think that's my problem. I personally probably put the stress on myself. But my biggest stress is that all the athletes are okay and make it down the mountain fine without any injury. And then, of course, that we raise enough money and that sponsorship money comes in so we can carry on the Eco Challenge, which is my favorite thing, and that everyone's okay and safe.
So it's an amazing thing that you put on every year, but it's something that, we lost someone special, and that's what this event is all about. And you're his significant other. Is it tough for you to do this every year? It's just psyched to see everybody celebrate him.
Yeah, no. I think all the people that come together, that this community, as well as my friends and volunteers and everyone that participates, fills my cup big time. It makes me so happy that everyone's celebrating Shane and continuing his legacy, and yeah, it doesn't make me sad. It makes me happy.
You make a lot of other people happy by donating money to different charities and different nonprofits to make a difference. Who's the big recipient this year? Who are we giving the money to?
We're giving it to Gateway in honor of Rob Gaffney, because he worked a lot with Gateway, and it's for kids that are battling with disabilities, mental disabilities. And so it's really important right now. I feel like there's a lot of stuff going on with kids, and this is a big one for me.
Events like this don't happen without sponsors, and a longtime supporter of this event is Luke Jacobson of Moment Skis. Beyond sponsoring the event, Luke picks up a huge bar tab at the slot bar every McConkey Saturday, which starts at about 9 a.m. He also builds custom snowblades, and this year, he inspired Wendy Fisher to come out to the event by telling her that he would pay for her plane ticket if she completed the three-peat. Anyways, I chatted with Luke about the day, Sherry, and Shane. You've been supporting the McConkey PMS event, I feel like, since the inception. Why is this event so important to you?
Yeah, maybe not since day one, but as soon as we could get in, like for a long time now. And it's just so important to me just because of how amazing Sherry is and how influential Shane was to the ski industry and what it means to Olympic Valley and the greater Tahoe area and just skiing in general. It's just super important.
And when you think of your ski brand, you've always experimented with shapes, and you've been one of the small guys that's been able to do that. Not everybody can. And Shane was really interested in the shapes that you experimented with early on. Can you kind of describe how you interacted with Shane on TGR and how excited he was about what you were doing?
Yeah, I mean, Shane was really one of the founders of pushing ski shapes, skiing on water skis, like being part of like the Volant series of skis, the Chubb, and then the Spatula and all that. And when we first started, we just wanted to make weird, fat, rockered skis. That was really unique back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
No one was doing it.
No one was really doing it. And badass athletes like Shane and some others with some other brands were pushing these Euro brands that were pretty stagnant in their designs to make something like that. And that was really cool. And then when we started pressing skis just as a hobby, we essentially just emulated the Spatula, and we just made it way wider. And I remember when we did that, we didn't ask for permission. We were small. We were just making 50 pair a year at that time. But I remember we got on TGR, and the first time, this is before I met Shane, he just reached out, and he was so stoked on ski design. He was like, oh my God, tell me about this ski. And it was just so inquisitive. And that was the first time I met Shane McConkey was through a direct message on the TGR forums. And I was like, oh my God, this is the fucking coolest thing ever. We're kind of doing something cool here. And this guy is just stoked on skiing and ski design progression. And, I got to meet him later, and he's amazing. But that was the first time I was like, holy shit. He had his finger on the pulse of the industry, and he was very interested in ski design and pushing those rocker and those reverse side cut shapes in the early days. He's the godfather of that stuff.
For sure. And speaking of Godfather, I think I look at you as the godfather of the party here, because every year it seems like Moment picks up a huge bar tab and everybody goes crazy at the slot bar. Is that happening again this year?
That is happening again. Luckily, I know the guy that owns the slot bar, and he needs new skis every year. And so I give him a pair of skis, he gives me a bar tab, and I like to help out the early morning party here for everybody.
And the party starts after the race. During the race, it was pure carnage. You'd see 10 ski bladers on a pitch, all ramping up speed, and then 3 of them would punch front and cartwheel. So many tips were caught, and the crowd erupted with each violent ragdoll. When the drone footage hits the internet, it's going to be amazing to watch, and it's going to be really funny. And like every year, there was a mad scramble at the finish, and the winners of the Golden Saucers this year were Ryan Faya and Wendy Fisher. This is Wendy's 4th win here, and this win completed a three-peat for Wendy, so she showered with Golden Saucers. And Ryan, well, this was his first. I will say that second place, it was very sketchy. We really couldn't tell who took second. I guess we do have winners listed on the site. I thought the horse took second place, but the horse isn't anywhere on our standings. So the horse, I saw you get it. Congratulations. That's all we need to say about you, because you are an underground racer in this event and you're only going to be recognized in the podcast. But congrats on your McConkey Saturday. When the race was over was when I started to realize that I was screwed. I didn't have any sound bites yet, and I needed to put together a podcast around this event. And this is what happens to me every year. I start freaking out. So it's time for me to start finding people to tell me some McConkey stories. And the first person I ran into was Maine's greatest athlete and defending PMS champion, Palisades Tahoe athlete Donny Pelletier, and what a unique attitude and style this guy has. How can you not love Donny?
So I'm here with Donny. Is it Pelletier? Because I always say it differently, like Pelletier, Pelletier. How do you even say it, Donny?
Yeah, if you're from Quebec, you say Pelletier, but if you're from Maine, you say Pelletier.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we are here. You're last year's champion. You won the Golden Saucer, and that's a huge deal. But this year it was a different conditions. You know, we had 18 inches of snow, and you being from Maine, did the powder affect the way that you ski here?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I'm more of like an ice and a bumps guy, and it was all just like, you know, California powder. These guys are all soft. They like to ski the soft snow, and so I kind of let them have it, you know what I mean? Took a couple, you know, tomahawks down on my way down, and, you know, I was in the running, but figured, you know, let the Californians have their friggin' powder.
And, you know, and thinking of that, just looking at you and your look, you're in like denim with some fur in there. And the way that you took those tomahawks today, you came down covered in white snow. Does that usually happen to you? Because you usually see Donny Pelletier just ripping down the bumps in a loose, crazy style that just like is unexplainable. But today it just looked like you were that almost from Jerry of the Day by the time you got down covered in snow.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like an extra layer of insulation. So, you take a nice tomahawk, get coated in snow. Keeps you warm, and then once you start to get hot, then you start skiing fast, and you kind of blow all the snow off you, and you dry out. So that's kind of like the technique.
All right, and so one thing with you being from Maine, you were probably the only Mainer ever sponsored by Palisades Tahoe. How does a deal come to that? Like, you know, you're kind of this underground skier who built this cult following, who's now like a mainstream, almost sensation for just crazy reasons of the weird style that you ski with, where it's like you ski better than everybody else, but your style's looser than everybody else. Like, how does a sponsorship like this come to play, and who else sponsors a guy like you?
Yeah, well, I think it's, you know, the sponsorships come to play because people see my stuff, and they see the technique, and they see what I can bring to the table, and they say, hey, you know what, we got to have this guy. And so, yeah, usually, you know, I'm from Maine. I work with Sunday River back home. That's the home mountain. And then I come out to Palisades, and they were like, hey, you know, this guy can really ski, and we probably ought to get him going on the program. And so we did it, and it's worked out pretty good.
You probably are the only athlete that has two different mountain sponsors.
Yeah, well, I think it's important, you know, that there's enough Donny to go around for everybody. So we ain't into exclusive deals. We're about, you know, representing Maine because it's the, you know, greatest state ever. But, you know, when you come to a place like Palisades, it's a great mountain. So we got to, you know, do it both justice.
All right, we're going to see you here again next year trying to get the saucer back.
Yeah, so long as it's firm, I'll get that saucer back, no problem.
Next, I ran into the owner of the infamous slot bar, Fritz Renner, and heard how his race went, and then we talked a little bit about Shane. How was your run up there? How many times did you cartwheel?
I had the best full face plant of my entire life. Full high speed, no hands out whatsoever, mouth full of snow, full smile. So much fun.
Yeah. Awesome. And everybody is starting their conversation out with telling me about their punch fronts and everything that happened out there. So it was pretty wild out there, 18 inches of snow. But we're not really here to talk about the downhill because you didn't win. We would talk about it if you did. But we're here to talk about just your relationship with Shane. Fair. And you've been here forever. You've got a couple stories you're going to share with us. I think a funny one and a serious one.
So I was the biggest ski movie dork, and I was lucky enough to move in with Scott Gaffney in 2003. So Shane would come over, and I would just nerd out. Oh, my God, Shane's a hero again every day. And so he really, you know, took me under his wing a little bit, and I'm really thankful to have had that relationship. But he did so many cool things for me, one of which, the one that really sticks out was I got a brand new pair of spatulas from him when they first came out, you know, for very little money. So I get them mounted at the hotel that I was working at here in the Valley. And sure enough, I'm not even kidding, like hours later, I come back to my truck, they're fucking gone. Somebody broke into my truck, stole them. And I was heartbroken. I mean, absolutely devastated. All I wanted to do was ski those things. 2 days later, new pair on the porch. Like,
that's so cool.
Totally took care of me. Couldn't believe it. I still, like, tears me up because I had no hope of getting another pair. On another note, different kind of story. Funny side is I went skiing one day. I was on KT, and I'm sitting there, you know, kind of in my own world, and there's a family, a guy and his kid next to me starts laughing, and I have no idea what they're laughing about. And he goes, yeah, you might want to like check your skis out. And like, still took me a minute. I'm looking around, and turns out there is a very graphic photo of two men entertaining each other, let's just say, on the back of my skis. And it turns out it was Gaffney who had put this picture on the back of my skis, but apparently it was a Shane thing that he had done. Shane had done this to Gaffney several times. So I got the, aftermath of that curse or cycle, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, pretty funny stuff. Horrified family.
That's pretty amazing. The next person I see is George Hjelte. I ran into him the first night at Plumpjack, and he got into an argument with Wendy Fisher because George told Wendy that Shane really wasn't a local growing up because he didn't live in the mountains. He was a weekend warrior. Whatever. It was funny to see Wendy get all worked up about that. And while Wendy might not be a huge fan of George's, he's always been good to me for the 3 days a year I'm in town, and I love the dude. So this year, he had this crazy panda head on where the jaw could move. It was like this crazy articulated jaw. So imagine a realistic panda on snowblades clenching his teeth. Anyways, George tells a story of Shane being inclusive.
All right, I'm here with George Hjelte. He just got done with the McConkey PMS downhill, and it was a tough one today, huh?
Yeah, a lot of punch fronts. A lot of punch fronts all the way down.
How many times do you think you did that? How many times did you tomahawk?
Probably 14.
18 inches of snow up there. It was deep. It was fast. It wasn't fast. It was probably slow. But I'm here to talk about Shane McConkey because that's what this whole day is about. And right now, can you describe your outfit first and foremost?
Well, I'm wearing a panda suit with a very, movie-grade mask where the jaw actually moves.
It's articulated, yeah.
Yeah, it's articulated jaw, and it's a little bit weird looking at your sunglasses right now.
It is really weird. So in terms of your McConkey story that you're going to share with us, I mean, you grew up here. Can you tell your best Shane story?
Yeah, so I was about 16 years old. Cody Townsend and I were living together. He was living on my couch at the time. And we were following Shane around on KT. And, Shane invited us to his birthday party, his 30th birthday party at his house. And, of course, being Groms around here, we're not going to say no to that kind of invitation, So we show up at Shane's birthday party, and they, hand us a beer. We're having beers, hanging out, and about halfway through the party, Shane looks at us, and he's like, "How old are you guys?" And we're like, "Oh, we're 16 years old." And he's like, can't believe that he's just, like, totally, giving us beers and telling us, like, to hang out at his party. And Shane was kind of like that. He never gave a fuck who you were or how old you were or where you were from or any of that. He just, he liked hanging out with cool people, and that was about it.
Speaking of Shane and kids, Emma Bryan has known Shane since she was pretty much a baby. And while she wasn't able to learn this trick from the master, she describes what Shane taught her little brother. You are way too young to have been friends with Shane McConkey by any means. Emily, what's your last name first?
Emma, yeah.
Emma, sorry.
Emma Bryan. I knew Shane when I was at their wedding when I was 6.
Okay.
And then I think I was Flower Girl, So he died when I was, 7 or 8, maybe. So I didn't know him that well. And the only story, one of my core memories of him was teaching my brother. We were at their house, and he was teaching my brother how to shove a noodle up his nose or through his mouth up into his nose and then thread it through the nostril and the mouth. And I thought it was the grossest thing ever, but I wanted to learn it so bad. But it was so awesome. I have tried it once. I think I needed the guidance because I just choked on it immediately. Right. Rocket can still do it though, and it's so awesome. But yeah, that's one of the coolest things that I ever saw Shane do because I was so young. I was like, this guy's fucking awesome.
It's time for my final sponsor break, and I can't tell you how much I love my gear from Outdoor Research. When I signed on with OR, I knew there wasn't an outerwear brand on the market that performs as well as what OR is developing. That's what happens when you test your gear in the absolutely terrible conditions that we can get here in the Pacific Northwest. Days in the mountains are always more fun when you're warm and dry, and I know my OR gear will always deliver that. I'll tell you, on cold days, I live in my cold front hoodie, which is hands down the warmest and most stylish puffy I've ever owned. And then when I get on snow, my snow crew jacket and pants are not only warm, but it's one of those fits where if you don't see me ski, I look like a pro. I'm so impressed with the style that OR has been bringing to the table lately. And off snow, they sent me some Feroci pants, which are now my daily drivers. Think stylish, lightweight, packable, do-anything pants with the right amount of zippered pockets and stretch to be the only pant that you'll ever need. I've been loving OR products since I bought my first OR rain jacket in 2000. And really, if you missed out on using my old discount code for OR products, well, I'm working on getting you a new code, but I can't promise anything. Sometimes you snooze, you lose. So check back for that, and in the meantime, head on over to OutdoorResearch.com and check out why they're one of the fastest growing brands in snow and beyond. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing. If you haven't heard of Best Day, they are hands down the best tasting non-alcoholic beer on the market. I enjoy Best Day for so many reasons. The flavor is the most important. I swear by the hazy IPA, the Kolsch, and the Belgian White. They all taste just as good or better than their alcoholic cousins. And I'll tell you, while I haven't quit drinking, when I go to the bar, after 3 or 4 beers, I usually feel like it's time for me to head home, and everyone thinks I'm lame. But lately, I have a new routine. I'll have a Best Day every 3rd beer, and it makes my night last twice as long. And we all know lasting longer is better. If you want to have your best day or night ever, or just enjoy a few cold ones at Après, grab a Best Day, and you can forget about the calories, forget about the alcohol, and forget about getting in trouble on the way home. To see all the flavors and order some beer, head on over to bestday.com. And if you're flying Alaska, you can now get a Best Day Kolsch at 30,000 feet. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. What's funny about that is that story is similar to a story we heard from industry legend Paul Crandall, another Powell Movement guest whose career included VP roles at Red Bull and GoPro. And since Emma didn't know how to pull off this trick, I figured Paul's consulting could help. And really, what's funny here is that Shane entertained adults and children in the same way, so Paul's going to describe how to pull off the spaghetti trick.
Oh, this one's funny. Me, Sherry, Shane, and my wife went out to dinner at a place called Moody's one night, and we probably had a little too much wine, but, you know, there's never enough wine, right? And so Shane had done that spaghetti thing up his nose, so we decided let's just all do it. And so all of us are at the table, we're snorting spaghetti up our nose and pulling it out our mouths and doing the whole, like, spaghetti through the nose and out the mouth trick. And it was super funny. We laughed our asses off, and just a fond memory of that old guy, man. I miss him already.
And is that one of those things that anybody can do? You just snort up?
Yeah, it's super easy. You just literally, you got to commit, but you got to close one nostril, you got to shove it in there, and you really got to snort it through so it gets in the back of your throat, and then you got to give the proverbial, like, and you cough it out, but you'll get it. And then you reach back there, have your friend reach back there and grab that sucker, and then you can do the spaghetti out the nose in the mouth trick. It works every time.
While that's kind of a wholesome, fun story, I had no idea what to expect when people told me to talk with Chris Boyle. I don't know him, he was in an old man costume, and either he was really injured or he was playing the part really well. But Chris's story helps explain a little of who Shane was, especially to people who are new.
Okay, so Shane McConkey, he's in the skydiving, I'm in the skydiving. First time I got to hang out with Shane McConkey, we were doing some load skydiving jumps for Red Bull out at Prosser and Truckee. They were for Shane McConkey, and it was Welcome to My World, the world of Red Bull. And Shane pulled his sack out in the airplane and showed it to me, and then he got out of the door and he smiled. It was amazing.
The next person I chatted with was Andy Miller, a dude who was pretty much born into the ski industry and ski retail in Alaska. A 20-year ski rep, he's currently with Blizzard Technica, amongst others. I ran into Andy and I got his take on the race, and I got some pure gold about McConkey.
How was the race for you today?
I fell 7 times. I face planted 7 times. Yeah, it was the most I'd ever face planted in a PMS, and I would say it was pure chaos. Some great pow turns. I think I got enough pow turns that I don't need to stand in line today. And yeah, it was amazing. It was awesome. Super, super fun. And I cheated at the bottom. I didn't do the uphill finish, but that's okay because I finished in the back of the pack as usual.
All right, well, if you don't win it, you're a loser anyway, so that's kind of how this event goes. But what's your history with Shane?
Well, I moved to the Valley in 2007, and I'd kind of known Shane before that. I worked in the ski industry as a rep, and I still work as a rep, but basically at that time I was actually doing a lot of what you do, which is microphone work, right? So I was on the mic, and I was hosting the big Warren Miller shows down in Reno. Actually, side note, one of Shane's stories that I had is I was on the mic when he jumped off the Silver Legacy and lost a ski. And yeah, so it was, I had a history with Shane and JT and like kind of the whole Squaw Valley crew before I actually moved into the Valley, but I'm still here in the Valley. And yeah, my history with him kind of goes way back. So yeah, it was great.
And what's your great McConkey story?
Well, it's kind of a crazy story because it was the last night he was in town before he went over to Italy. And basically what had happened is I ended up going night skiing, which I've never gone night skiing before. Like, it was not a thing. Well, I had gone night skiing, but it was not something I did regularly. And I remember I was actually breaking in skis. I had some new demo skis to break in. I was like, okay, I'll go night skiing. It's fine, you know. And I live basically right across from the tram face. And what I ended up doing is I went night skiing, and it was like the classic Friday night skiing crowd here at Palisades, which is like, back then, it was like kind of like you take a run, you drink a Coors Light. You know what I mean? Like, that crowd was a little different than, you know. So I'm in there, and I'm kind of breaking in skis, and all of a sudden I look around, everyone's partying, and I see Shane over in the corner, and he's sitting there, and he's got this giant backpack on, and it's a full moon. And I was like, Shane, like, what's up? Nice night for night skiing. And he just goes, yep. And I was like, good moon over Silverado there, huh? And he's like, yep, Miller. And I was like, okay. And I ski down. I ended up coming over to the bars, and we were like having some beers, and I didn't see Shane. And then all of a sudden I walked back to my condo, and I saw Shane and JT's riggings, right? So basically what they were doing is they were climbing up the tram tower. They were shimming out over the cables, and they were dropping from the highest point over Silverado. And they were basically just doing base jumps. And then they were coming out of the canyon, which is right over where I live. And they walked out, and they saw my roommate, Heather. And Heather was like, oh, my God, Shane, JT, what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, yeah, we just base jumped over Silverado. Like, and she's like, you want a shot of whiskey? You want to come in and party and warm up? And they came in the condo, and I had walked into this party scene, and it was just Heather, JT, and Shane absolutely raging, listening to punk music, like drinking Jack Daniels. And I came right in. I was ready, right? And we had a blast. We partied all night, and then they finally left. And then I remember I woke up the next morning, I found Shane's Oakley hat, and I texted JT, and they were already on a plane to fly to Italy the next day.
Whoa.
And it was just kind of a crazy night. And I remember always talking to JT about it, and he was like, you know, that was the last night I really partied with him. And it was like in Squaw, you know what I mean? Like here in his home place. And yeah, and I remember I tried to get the hat back. He's like, dude, keep that. And I still have that hat to this day. So yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, crazy story. But
awesome, man.
Yeah, but I love Shane, I love Sherry, I love Ayla, I love the whole thing. I mean, he's definitely part of why I was in the ski industry and have been for as long as I have. So huge inspiration.
At this point in the day, I don't feel like I have enough audio for a podcast, and I'm kicking myself for doing nothing on Friday. But that's the same feeling I get every year, and really, I can't stress about it, because I'm there and invited back every year because I'm awesome at hosting live events. And now it's time for the live stream and live event to start. And this event requires an infectious energy, an ability to toe the line with humor in the spirit of Shane. And while it was a bummer that my co-host Roy Tuscany couldn't join me this year as he was on a plane home from the Adaptive Surfing World Championships, I knocked it out of the park again with this event. But really, all I do is talk on a mic. Sherry and her army of assistants and volunteers are the ones who make this event so easy for me. So thank you. And when the event's over, I head out to get the last of my McConkey stories, and the final two that I have are both incredible. The first comes from New York Times bestselling author Stephen Kotler. If you haven't read his book, The Rise of Superman, which I believe features deep dives into the psyche of Jeremy Jones, Laird Hamilton, Danny Way, and others, do what I did and order the book on Amazon. Anyways, I love the story that Stephen has to share, so here it is.
So I'm here with Stephen Kotler, who wrote The Rise of Superman, which I'm a total idiot and I don't know anything about. But I'm going to check it out after we leave here. But you were here in the Tahoe area like for the past however 30, whatever many years, and you were friends with McConkey, and you're going to share a story with us. I don't know what it's going to be, but we're at a loud, crowded bar. Hopefully it comes out. Here we go.
We were in a bar in Vail. Shane, I think, had just won something, so he had some money. And he took a $100 bill, tore it into bits. It was a crowded, crazy bar party. Threw it on the floor and said, whoever can grab the most pieces with their teeth can keep the bill. And so the entire pro ski community, it was all poor and all there, dove onto the floor. And I don't remember who won. I just remember Vinnie Dorian running around trying to light people's pants on fire. Like crawling around on the floor with a Zippo trying to light people's pants on fire while everybody else was crawling around trying to get the money. I don't know who actually got the money, but it was pretty damn funny.
I wish I could have been there to witness that, and I wish there were a skier or anyone I know who had a similar sense of humor as the one that Shane had. I mean, who thinks to do shit like that? And the final Shane story I have for you is one that happened after his death 15 years ago. And it really sums up Shane's lifestyle on the road with his traveling circus of idiots.
Mike Rosen back, and he's got a good one. Like, no doubt in his mind, a good one. He's got a smile. He's ready to go. Rosen, what do we got here?
One of my favorites. So when the McConkey movie came out, I was fortunate enough that Red Bull brought me to New York for the Tribeca premiere. And weird as it may seem, the guy who edited the movie was a friend of a friend. His name was David. I can't remember his last name, but he actually also did the Metallica movie. And after it was all said and done, we were at the premiere, and then we were at the party. He came up to myself and Miles Dasher, and he said, "So, what do you think?" And Miles and I looked at each other, and we said, it was really good. Seemed to be lacking in footage of humping and making things your penis. And he turned and went stone cold and yelled at us, and he said, "You motherfuckers. There were 900 hours of film for this. 300 were you and your jackass friends running around the world humping things and making things your penis. I'm done."
So that was my annual trip to the Pain McShlonkey Classic, and I can't tell you how much this event means to me. I mean, I'm on a big ski and snowboard Hall of Fame committee, and every year I get an invite to the Hall of Fame awards ceremony, and every year I decline because they hold it during the McConkey weekend. And while the Hall of Fame is important to me, I don't always agree with what they do. And when I think about it, Shane is way more important to me, and I loved everything that he did, but the whole death thing. So it's a total bummer that he's gone, but it is an amazing weekend celebrating him. To anyone out there listening who hasn't experienced how incredible Palisades Tahoe is, come on out to the PMS next year and you're going to have the best weekend of your season. That's the podcast. At this point, I want to ask you to review me wherever you listen, tell your friends about the show, and support my incredible sponsors. They are Elon Skis, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Best Day Brewing, Outdoor Research, and Stanley. Have a great week, everyone, and thank you, Shane.